March 17th, 1944. Room 2891, Arlington Hall Station, Virginia. The teletype machine chatters in the pre-dawn darkness, spitting out intercepted radio traffic that cryptoanalyst Captain Howard Engstrom has seen 1,000 times before. But this morning, something makes his coffee go cold in his hand. The German transmission patterns have changed, not in volume, not in frequency, but in confidence. They're discussing American tactical movements with an accuracy that shouldn't be possible. Engstrom runs his finger down the decrypt log, his West Point ring catching the overhead light. For 3 weeks, Wehrmacht units have been referencing Allied supply routes, unit positions, and convoy schedules with unsettling precision. The information isn't coming from reconnaissance aircraft or agents, it's coming from somewhere else entirely. His hand reaches for the secure telephone, connecting him to the Signal Intelligence Service headquarters. "We have a problem," he says into the receiver. "They're reading us." The M209 cipher machine sits on every American officer's desk from North Africa to the Pacific. Designed by Swedish cryptographer Boris Hagelin and mass-produced by Smith Corona, it's compact, reliable, and, until now, considered adequately secure for tactical communications. The device uses 6 rotating wheels and an adjustable key system that generates variable substitution patterns. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone, slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. American commanders have sent hundreds of thousands of messages through M209s, trusting the 101,405,850 possible key combinations to keep their plans hidden from enemy eyes. But trust, Engstrom now realizes, might have been catastrophic. The evidence accumulates like water behind a failing dam. In Tunisia, a German panzer battalion repositioned hours before an American flanking maneuver. In Italy, Luftwaffe fighters appeared precisely where supply convoys were scheduled to pass. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. Field commanders attributed these incidents to bad luck or informants, but Engstrom sees the pattern that others missed. The Germans aren't guessing, they're decrypting. Within 48 hours, a priority cable reaches Bletchley Park, the British Signals Intelligence Center that has been waging its own secret war against German encryption. The message is brief and alarming. Suspect M209 compromise. Require immediate assessment. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. At Bletchley, the news lands on the desk of Commander Edward Travis, who has spent 4 years orchestrating the cryptanalytic assault on Hitler's communications networks. His team has achieved what many thought impossible, breaking the supposedly unbreakable Enigma cipher machine through a combination of Polish mathematical breakthroughs, captured German materials, and the revolutionary electromechanical Bombe, designed by mathematician Alan Turing. The Bombe uses rotating drums to simulate Enigma's rotor settings, cycling through thousands of potential decryption keys per hour until the correct configuration reveals itself. But this is different. This is the mirror image of their victory, the nightmare scenario they've fought to prevent. The investigation begins with brutal efficiency. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. American and British cryptanalysts work in parallel, examining every M209 message sent in the past 6 months, searching for the fingerprints of enemy analysis. They look for cribs, predictable phrases that cryptanalysts exploit as entry points. They map German responses against Allied communications, building timelines that reveal a chilling synchronization. Then, in early April, the confirmation arrives from an unexpected source. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. A captured German signals officer, exhausted and demoralized after the collapse of Axis positions in Italy, mentions something during routine interrogation. He speaks of a machine, not Enigma, but something else, something the Americans built to break American codes. The officer describes a device constructed by German cipher specialists, an electromechanical apparatus that uses binary logic gates to automate the cryptanalysis of M209 traffic. The Germans call it by its designer's name, the Weber machine. after engineer Reinald Weber, who led the cryptanalysis unit responsible for its creation. Like the British Bombe, it represents an evolutionary leap. Warfare fought not with bullets and bombs alone, but with circuits and mathematical logic racing at mechanical speed. The realization hits Allied command like an artillery barrage. Both sides have independently invented automated code-breaking machines. Both sides have crossed the threshold into a new domain of conflict, where thinking machines wage invisible battles at speeds beyond human capability. The Germans have been inside American communications for months, perhaps longer. Every tactical plan, every supply schedule, every casualty report, encrypted with M209, has potentially been an open book to Wehrmacht intelligence. As dawn breaks over Arlington Hall on March 18th, emergency orders go out across every American command. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. Until further notice, M209 traffic is restricted to non-critical communications. A new encryption system must be deployed immediately. And somewhere in the bureaucratic machinery of wartime intelligence, another order takes shape, one that will determine whether the Allies can win the cryptologic arms race they didn't know they were losing. April 22nd, 1944. Bletchley Park, Buckinghamshire, England. The emergency meeting convenes in Hut 6, where the machinery of Allied code-breaking operates around the clock in shifts that never stop. Commander Travis stands before a map of Europe marked with red pins indicating known German signals intelligence stations. Beside him, Major William Friedman, the brilliant American cryptanalyst who helped design the unbreakable Sigaba machine, examines photographs of intercepted German technical documents recovered from a captured signals officer in Naples. "They've been inside our communications since last spring," Travis announces, his voice cutting through the cigarette smoke. "Sicily, possibly earlier." The room goes silent. Sicily means the invasion, the fighting through the mountains, the coordination of naval bombardment and ground assault, all potentially compromised. During those crucial weeks in July 1943, German forces executed what military analysts called an impossibly efficient retreat across the Strait of Messina, evacuating thousands of troops and equipment while Allied forces struggled to cut them off. The Germans didn't just get lucky. They were reading American tactical radio traffic encrypted with M209 machines, anticipating every move before it happened. Friedman spreads captured German documents across the conference table. The papers, stamped with Wehrmacht intelligence markings, describe a cryptoanalytic apparatus unlike anything the Allies have encountered. They were reading American tactical radio traffic encrypted with M209 machines, anticipating every move before it happened. Friedman spreads captured German documents across the conference table. The papers, stamped with Wehrmacht intelligence markings, describe a cryptoanalytic apparatus unlike anything the Allies have encountered. The Weber machine, named after Reinhold Weber, a German engineer leading the cryptanalysis effort, uses electromechanical relays and binary logic gates to automate the solution of M209 ciphers. Where human cryptanalysts might spend days working through possibilities, this machine reduces the process to hours. But the German breakthrough required more than just machinery. It exploited a fundamental weakness in how American forces used the M209 in the field. The device generates variable encryption through 6 rotating wheels and adjustable pin settings, theoretically producing over 100 million possible key combinations. In laboratory conditions, with proper procedures and key management, the M209 should resist casual cryptanalysis. The battlefield, however, is not a laboratory. Under combat conditions, radio operators make mistakes. They reuse indicator settings, the starting positions for the encryption wheels, creating what cryptanalysts call messages in depth. 2 messages encrypted with identical settings create a mathematical relationship that can be exploited. The German cryptanalysts at NAST5, the Signals Intelligence Evaluation Center attached to the Fifth Army Front in Italy, specialized in finding these errors. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone, slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history, clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally, subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. Young mathematicians working under Sergeant Engelhardt would intercept thousands of American transmissions, searching for the telltale patterns of repeated indicators. Once they identified messages in depth, German cryptanalysts could begin reconstructing the key settings through analytical methods that required patience, mathematical skill, and captured cipher material. The breakthrough came when they captured an intact American key list during the Sicily campaign, a document listing the daily encryption settings for an entire M209 network. With this Rosetta Stone in hand, German codebreakers could read current American traffic in real time, issuing intelligence reports based on decrypted messages that revealed unit positions, supply schedules, and attack plans. The Weber machine accelerated this process exponentially. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone, slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history, clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally, subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones, cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions, a voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. According to fragmentary reports from interrogated German signals personnel, the device could process the relative settings from messages in depth and calculate the absolute wheel positions, the actual internal configuration of the target M209 machine. What once required teams of cryptanalysts working manually could now be accomplished by a single operator feeding punched tape into an electromechanical processor. Travis watches his intelligence officers absorb the implications. The Germans haven't just broken a cipher. They've industrialized code breaking, transforming it from an artisanal craft into a mechanical process. It's the same revolutionary leap the British achieved with the Turing Bombe against Enigma, but aimed in the opposite direction. How many messages? Someone asks. Friedman consults his notes. German records from August 1943 show 6 intelligence reports based on 126 decrypted M209 messages in a single month. Field units in Italy were receiving continuous decrypts of traffic with specific network indicators. By March 1944, Wehrmacht intelligence was breaking keys for 6 to 8 days per month on the Western Front. The mathematics of compromise spread across the mental calculations of everyone in the room. 6 to 8 days per month means roughly 1/4 of American tactical communications were potentially readable by the enemy. Every 4th radio message discussing troop movements, every 4th supply coordination, every 4th casualty report visible to German intelligence. An RAF officer near the back speaks up. What about other Allied ciphers? Are the British systems compromised? Travis shakes his head. No evidence the Germans have penetrated Typex or our high-grade systems. This appears focused on American tactical machines, but that's cold comfort given the scope of American operations. The meeting extends through lunch and into the afternoon. Recommendations form. Immediate restrictions on M209 use for anything beyond routine administrative traffic, accelerated deployment of the more secure SIGABA machines to forward units, and, most urgently, a comprehensive investigation into what other cryptographic secrets the Germans might possess. As daylight fades over Bletchley Park, another priority emerges. When Allied forces finally defeat Germany, intelligence teams must capture the cryptographic apparatus and personnel of the Wehrmacht before they can destroy their secrets or flee to unpredictable destinations. The race isn't just about protecting Allied communications anymore. It's about seizing the future of cryptologic warfare before it vanishes into the chaos of Germany's collapse. The operation will need a codename. Someone suggests TICOM, Target Intelligence Committee. May 15, 1944. Washington, D.C., Office of Strategic Services. Colonel Telford Taylor sits across from William Friedman in a windowless office where classified documents cover every horizontal surface. Taylor, a lawyer turned intelligence officer who will soon lead the prosecution at Nuremberg, has been tasked with organizing something unprecedented: a coordinated, Allied assault on German cryptographic infrastructure before the Third Reich can destroy its secrets. They call it TICOM, Taylor explains, sliding a folder across the desk. Target Intelligence Committee. When Germany falls, and it will fall, we go in immediately. First wave, ahead of occupation forces if necessary. The plan crystallizes through May and June as Allied armies push deeper into France following the D-Day landings. Intelligence teams identify targets. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone, slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. The OKW/WWII cryptographic service in Berlin, the Wehrmacht signal intelligence regiments spread across occupied Europe, and cryptanalysis stations like NAST5 in Italy, where the Weber machine operates. Every captured German signals officer undergoes interrogation, focusing on one question: where are the machines, and who built them? But TICOM represents only half of the Allied response. The other half requires solving an immediate tactical crisis. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone, slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. American forces cannot continue using compromised M209 machines for anything beyond routine communications. The SIG Ababa machine, far more secure with its complex rotor system, cannot be mass-produced quickly enough to replace 140,000 M209 units already deployed worldwide. The solution emerges from understanding how the Germans achieved their breakthrough. German cryptanalysts didn't break the M209 through pure mathematical brilliance. They exploited operator errors and captured materials. Messages encrypted with identical indicator settings, careless key management, and the catastrophic capture of an American key list during the Sicily campaign gave Wehrmacht intelligence the foothold they needed. New procedures roll out across American Signal Corps units with the urgency of combat orders. Radio operators receive strict instructions. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone, slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. Never reuse indicator settings, change keys according to rigid schedules, minimize message length, use operational codes to disguise tactical information even within encrypted traffic. Field commanders learn that cryptographic security isn't just a technical problem, it's a discipline requiring constant vigilance. The changes work. By summer 1944, German cryptanalysts report increasing difficulty breaking American M209 traffic. The mathematical relationship between messages in depth, the exploit that made automated cryptanalysis possible, disappears as American operators stop making the critical errors. The Weber machine, brilliant as it is, cannot break what operators no longer compromise. Meanwhile, Allied cryptanalysts deepen their own technological advantage. A deep, steady narration, with a calm but commanding tone, slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history, clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally, subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones, cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions, a voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. At Bletchley Park, the Colossus computer, a room-sized electronic marvel using 2,400 vacuum tubes, processes German high-level cipher traffic at speeds that would have seemed impossible just years earlier. The machine represents yet another evolutionary leap beyond the electromechanical Bombe, entering the realm of true electronic computation. While the Germans achieved automation with the Weber machine, the British have crossed into an entirely new domain of processing power. The cryptologic arms race has become a race against time itself. Each side tries to accelerate the speed of analysis, to compress hours into minutes and minutes into seconds. The Weber machine uses binary logic gates and electromechanical relays to solve M209 settings faster than human cryptanalysts. The Bombe simulates Enigma rotors through mechanical rotation, testing thousands of configurations per hour. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. Colossus abandons mechanical motion entirely, using electronic switching to achieve unprecedented computational velocity. But technology alone cannot win this invisible war. The human element, the radio operator who follows procedures correctly, the cryptanalyst who recognizes a pattern in intercepted noise, the intelligence officer who understands what decrypted messages reveal about enemy intentions, remains irreplaceable. Machines accelerate human thinking, but they cannot replace human judgment. By autumn 1944, as Allied armies approach the German frontier, the cryptographic balance has shifted decisively. German signals intelligence still achieves occasional successes against Allied communications, but the systematic reading of American tactical traffic has ended. The Allies, meanwhile, continue extracting intelligence from German Enigma messages with industrial efficiency, directing airstrikes and naval operations based on decrypted enemy plans. The final act approaches. TICOM teams prepare to cross into Germany with detailed target lists, specific buildings, specific personnel, specific machines that must be captured before they vanish into the chaos of defeat. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone, slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history, clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally, subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. The Weber machine sits somewhere in that collapsing Reich, a testament to German engineering skill and a prize that Allied intelligence cannot allow to escape. Colonel Taylor reviews reconnaissance photographs showing the bombed-out streets of Berlin, where OKW/WWII headquarters once operated. The cryptographic service has already begun dispersing, moving personnel and equipment to avoid Allied air raids and the advancing Soviet army. Finding them will require speed, ruthlessness, and extraordinary luck. The race enters its final lap, not just to win the war, but to capture the future of warfare itself, encrypted in circuits and mathematics, waiting somewhere in the ruins of the Third Reich. April 28th, 1945, somewhere near Kaufbeuren, Bavaria. Captain Howard Campaign feels the jeep lurch over rubble as TICOM Team 4 pushes deeper into southern Germany, traveling roads still warm from retreating Wehrmacht columns. The cryptoanalyst from the Naval Communications Supplementary Activity had spent 3 years at Bletchley Park breaking German naval codes. Now he's hunting the men who built those codes, racing against the collapse of the Third Reich and the advancing Soviet army. The intelligence is fragmentary, but urgent. OKW, the Wehrmacht's cryptographic service, has dissolved into the chaos of Germany's final days. Personnel have scattered. Equipment has been hidden, destroyed, or simply abandoned in the mass evacuation southward. The archive, containing decades of German cryptographic research and operational records, has vanished completely. A deep, steady narration, with a calm but commanding tone, slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle, emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. Team 1 had already captured intact Geheimschreiber cipher machines in the north. Team 3 investigated German signals intelligence units that had been monitoring Allied communications throughout the war. But the Weber machine, the electromechanical device that broke M209 traffic, remained elusive. German signals officers, when they could be found and interrogated, provided contradictory information about its location and operational status. Campaign's team reaches a small village where local civilians report seeing Wehrmacht signal troops passing through days earlier. The troops were hauling equipment, moving south toward the Alpine Redoubt, where rumors suggested German forces might make a final stand. Following the trail leads to an abandoned schoolhouse where someone has tried to burn documents in the courtyard. The fire didn't burn hot enough. Campaign and his team sift through charred papers, finding fragments of cryptographic worksheets and technical specifications. One partially destroyed document describes cryptanalytic procedures for American cipher systems, complete with statistical analyses and operational timelines. Another references a station designation, NAST-5, the Signals Intelligence Evaluation Center that had operated in Italy. They were here, Campaign says, photographing each recovered fragment before the spring wind can scatter them, maybe 48 hours ahead of us. The pursuit continues through villages where white flags hang from windows and German soldiers walk openly toward Allied lines to surrender. TCOM teams operate in a surreal landscape where the war is simultaneously ending and ongoing, towns declaring peace while gun battles rage a few kilometers away. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone, slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. The teams carry authorization to requisition any transportation, enter any facility, and detain any personnel necessary to accomplish their mission. On May 3rd, Team 6 reaches the German Naval Intelligence Center and SIGINT headquarters, as Wehrmacht staff are still attempting to destroy records. British cryptanalysts burst through doors to find rooms thick with smoke from burning documents. They save what they can, hauling filing cabinets wholesale onto trucks while naval officers watch in stunned silence. But the greatest intelligence windfall comes from an unexpected source. On May 21st, following information from a German prisoner of war, TCOM Team 1 locates surviving members of a signals intelligence unit that had been intercepting Soviet high-level communications. The prisoners lead Allied officers to Rosenheim, where they recover 7.5 tons of specialized German equipment, wideband receivers designed specifically to intercept Russian radio teletype signals. The Germans call it the Russian fish. When TCOM personnel reassemble one of the machines and power it up, German operators demonstrate its capabilities, intercepting Soviet military traffic in real time while their American captors watch in fascination. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. First Lieutenant Paul Whitaker later reports, "They were intercepting Russian traffic right while we were there. Pretty soon, they had shown us all we needed to see." The capture represents more than a technological prize. As the wartime alliance between Western powers and the Soviet Union fractures into Cold War hostility, the German expertise in breaking Soviet codes becomes immediately valuable. The enemy of yesterday transforms into the teacher of tomorrow. Meanwhile, the search for the OKW archive continues through May and into summer. Teams follow leads from northern Germany to the Bavarian mountains, interrogating hundreds of former Wehrmacht cryptographers, searching buildings, excavating bomb craters. In one remarkable discovery, waterproof containers holding portions of the archive are recovered from the bed of Lake Schliersee, where someone had attempted to hide them in the final days. The Weber machine itself, if physical examples survive, becomes one prize among many in the vast haul of German cryptographic secrets extracted by TICOM. But its significance transcends the hardware. The machine proved that both sides had independently reached the same technological threshold, automating the ancient art of code-breaking through electromechanical computation. August 12, 1945. CSIC, Combined Services Detailed Interrogation Center, Wiesbaden. Dr. Erich Huttenhein sits across from British interrogators in a windowless room where the summer heat makes breathing feel like work. 3 months after Germany's surrender, the former cryptanalyst from WWII, the man who spent years breaking Allied codes, now answers questions about the machines and methods that nearly changed the course of the war. The Weber device, he begins in careful English, was never meant to be the final solution. It was simply faster than human analysis. The interrogation is one of dozens conducted by TICOM teams throughout the summer of 1945. Having scoured Germany from the Baltic coast to the Austrian Alps, Allied intelligence officers have assembled an extraordinary haul. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. 7.5 tons of intercept equipment, thousands of documents recovered from hiding places ranging from abandoned farmhouses to the bottom of mountain lakes, and more than 200 German cryptographers whose expertise represents decades of signals intelligence work. The search had been desperate and urgent. By the time TICOM teams began operations in April, OKW/CHI had already dissolved, splitting into northern and southern groups as Berlin fell. Personnel scattered into the chaos of Germany's collapse. Documents were burned, buried, or thrown into rivers. The massive archive that contained years of cryptanalytic research seemed to have vanished completely. But fragments remained. In June, TICOM Team 4 followed leads to Lake Schliersee in Bavaria, where waterproof containers holding portions of the OKW/CHICOM archive were recovered from the lakebed. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone, slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. Other teams intercepted German cryptographers before they could disappear into Allied prisoner-of-war camps holding millions of captured Wehrmacht soldiers. Still others arrived at facilities just as staff were attempting to destroy records, bursting through doors to salvage what smoke and flame had not yet consumed. The intelligence windfall exceeded expectations. Beyond the Weber machine and German successes against M209 traffic, TICOM teams discovered something far more valuable for the emerging post-war world: German expertise in breaking Soviet communications. On May 21st, following information from prisoners, Team 1 located surviving members of a signals unit that had been intercepting and decrypting Russian high-level traffic throughout the war. The equipment they captured, specialized wideband receivers designed to intercept Soviet radio teletype signals, was immediately demonstrated by German operators who intercepted live Russian military traffic while their American captors watched. Lieutenant Paul Whitaker later reported, "They were intercepting Russian traffic right while we were there. Pretty soon, they had shown us all we needed to see." The capture of what Allied intelligence called the Russian fish represented TICOM's most significant achievement. As the wartime alliance between Western powers and the Soviet Union disintegrated into Cold War confrontation, German knowledge of Soviet cryptographic systems became immediately valuable. The enemy of yesterday transformed into the teacher of tomorrow. But the human cost of the cryptographic war remained incalculable. From an intelligence standpoint, German successes had been important but not decisive. American high-level strategic communications remained secure. However, tactical operations suffered considerably. During 1942 and early 1943, Anglo-American shipping losses were catastrophic, 6 times greater than any comparable period, largely because German cryptanalysts were reading Allied convoy communications. Thousands of sailors died in the North Atlantic, while their encrypted messages were being decrypted in German intelligence centers. The M209 compromise, though less devastating than convoy cipher failures, had cost lives in Italy, Sicily, and France. Every time German forces anticipated Allied movements, every time Luftwaffe fighters appeared where supply convoys were scheduled, someone paid the price. The cryptographic battlefield was invisible, but its consequences spilled blood on real battlefields. Dr. Huttenhein's interrogation continues through the afternoon. He describes the mathematical methods, the captured materials that provided crucial entry points, the procedural weaknesses that German cryptoanalysts exploited. His answers fill pages of reports that will remain classified for decades. TICOM itself will become one of the war's most enduring secrets, mentioned occasionally in cryptographic histories, but detailed only after massive declassifications beginning in the 2000s. As summer fades into autumn, the TICOM teams complete their mission and return home. Behind them, they leave a defeated Germany, beginning its long journey toward recovery. Ahead lies a new conflict, one where the cryptographic lessons learned against Nazi Germany will be applied against Soviet communism. The Weber machine, that remarkable electromechanical device that automated the breaking of American tactical codes, becomes a footnote in the broader story. Its significance lies not in what it achieved, but in what it represented. The moment when both sides in a global conflict independently crossed the threshold into automated cryptanalysis, transforming ancient code-breaking arts into modern computing science. The race between Allied and German cryptographers never had a decisive winner in the traditional sense. Both sides achieved breakthroughs. Both sides suffered compromises. But in the end, the Allies built better machines, recruited better mathematicians, and, most crucially, implemented better operational security that prevented catastrophic systematic exploitation. As twilight settles over Wiesbaden on August 12th, a deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. Huttenheim signs his interrogation transcript and is escorted back to the detention facility. The thinking machines of World War II, Enigma, the Bombe, the Weber device, Colossus, have become relics of a conflict that ended with atomic fire over Japanese cities. The next generation of computers will be faster, more powerful, and infinitely more consequential. But they all trace their lineage back to this moment. A deep, steady narration, with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. When cryptographers realized that machines could think and that wars could be won not just with steel and courage, but with circuits racing at speeds beyond human comprehension.